Everything else is conversation. Well, hello. And maybe we can start by you telling me a little bit about, are you undergraduates for the most part? Yeah? That woman's an imposter.
I'm undergrad.
And we're old friends. So how many of you think about writing as a prospective occupation? Not so many, huh? So really, this is more of a kind of this would be it's like a liberal arts thing, right? Okay, well then, I think that maybe it would be useful before plunging into the arcana of that show to just talk more generally about my experience of the relationship between my work and society generally, and also the ideas of what working in a mass medium is for an artist, and as opposed to, say, you know, the idea 100 years ago was you were kind of writing privately, and you know, if 5,000 people read your work, that'd you know, that'd be a good deal. And there was also kind of a presupposition about that the reader of your work would more or less share the same background, and that your as you did, and that your work would be would evoke and draw upon a whole set of shared assumptions, and to a large extent, the attachment of entertainment now to mass commerce, of literature, let's say, or storytelling, to mass commerce, has caused kind of a sea change in the idea of what art is supposed to do. James Fenimore Cooper, one of our best movie writers, he wrote like about 175 years ago, and he wrote like The Last of the Mohicans, that kind of stuff. But he also won the first libel suit in America against a newspaper, which had published a bunch of rank fabrications about him, and he sued him, and then because he was a loudmouth, he wrote a couple of novels about the press, and which predicted that the day would come when facts of any kind are nothing more than articles of commerce, something used to sell something else. And the idea of entertainment today, the fact of entertainment, is soaked now in precisely that idea, that entertainment is simply used to sell something else, and that the worth of the entertainment is a function of how well it sells something. Now that runs counter to what used to be the assumptions about what an entertainment or a piece of art was supposed to do. And yet I think today we sort of take for granted the idea that entertainment and commerce are, if not synonymous, certainly absolutely interrelated. Here's a joke which exploits that difference. Lillian Hellman was a playwright. She was a pretty good playwright. She was a bit of a liar, but politically, but that's a different story. Anyway, she wrote a play And Samuel Goldwyn, who was a big producer out here, one of the first generation of the big Jewish Hollywood producers. And I don't mean to be anti-Semitic, but although I am, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm a Jewish person. Although several doctoral dissertations have been written about me as a self-hating Jewish storyteller. I always thought that came with the territory of being Jewish. But I digress. So the thing is, Goldwyn, who always mistrusted his own instincts because he was essentially a salesman, but he had this kind of suspicious respect for art. So he used to have his people scouring the old pieces of literature and also the Broadway plays for materials that he could then turn into articles of commerce. So his scout comes back from Broadway and he's just seen Lillian Hellman's play, he says, "Mr. Goldwyn, this is it. This is the big play on Broadway this year." And for Goldwyn, Broadway passed for art, you know. He says, "Okay, what's the name of it?" He says, "The Children's Hour. It's great. Downside, it's about lesbians." Goldwyn says, "Don't worry, we'll make them Mexicans." Now, that's probably an apocryphal story, but it suggests that from a commercial perspective, the internal quality of a work is subordinate to a whole range of other matters of taste. And for someone who aspires to spirituality, we'll say, what's the name of this course?
Religion, Media, and Hollywood.
Well, it's 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? How do you live in this world? You know, want to be heard, and reconcile those competing sensibilities. Let's take, for the sake of discussion, The Children's Hour as a play which addresses what we can call the human heart in conflict with itself, one way or another. And the Goldwynian perspective, how do we keep people from feeling threatened by any controversial subject? How do we broaden and create the most universal appeal for everything that we do? How do we make it an article of commerce, in other words? To the extent that the merchant views art as something to be consumed and paid for by as many people as possible, then the goal is you broaden it out. So that's one school of thought. Now, how does the artist reconcile the competing claims and internalize those competing claims between addressing a large audience and staying true to the internal logic, the spiritual conflict of the story that he's telling? Is that is it possible to do that? Is it desirable to try and do that?